Let's talk now about a pretty significant action taken by the U.S. State Department to remove the group Mujahideen-e-Khalq from the U.S. government's terrorist list. It's a group many Americans have now heard of, though many simply know it as the MEK, because of the frequently played commercials the group has sponsored, and they air on most cable networks.
MEK is Iran's democratic opposition, working for a nuclear-free Iran founded on human rights. Unjustly listed a terrorist group, MEK is the victim of violence by the radical regime in Iran and their Iraqi allies. Europe has delisted MEK. And in 2010, a U.S. court ordered a review. Iranians, U.S. lawmakers, and former senior officials demand delisting. Secretary Clinton, for democracy and freedom in Iran, delist MEK.
So the MEK and the dozens of Americans who have gone to bat for them have now gotten their wish. But it's not quite so simple as, a peaceful group wrongly put on a list of evil terrorists. I want to read part of a document put forth by the Bush administration in making the case for war with Iraq from back in 2002. The section of this is titled Saddam Hussein's Support for International Terrorism. It says, quote, Iraq shelters terrorist groups including Mujahideen-e-Khalq, which has used terrorist violence against Iran and in the 1970s was responsible for killing several U.S. military personnel and U.S. civilians. So I should mention, this is just one of 6 bullet points in the entire list of Saddam's terror-related activities. And now, a decade later, things have changed immensely. To talk more about why this is the case, I'm joined now by Jamal Abdi, the policy director of the National Iranian American Council. So this is really interesting, Jamal. I know that your group has worked tirelessly to try to prevent this from happening. Why do you think it happened?
My organization worked to make sure that this wasn't this delisting decision wasn't the result of a politicized process in which a designated terrorist organization uses money, lobbying, PR to pressure its way off of the terrorist list. I think at the end of the day, this shows that the campaign that the MEK embarked on worked, and that paying people like Rudy Giuliani and Howard Dean to pressure the State Department to take this group off the list ended up working. And it creates a really dangerous precedent for other organizations that are dangerous to U.S. interests and undermine, frankly, our policy regarding resolving the dispute with Iran peacefully. And
you mentioned Rudy Giuliani and others. It's not just former politicians and people who had a former role. We're talking about current lawmakers. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, she has apparently accepted at least $20,000 in donations from Iranian American groups or their leaders. That went into sort of her, political campaign war chest. And that's according to the Center for Responsive Politics. And, she's been outspoken about the need to delist MEK and to protect when they were living, many of the members were living at Camp Ashraf. I just want to play a little bit of what she said.
The safety of the residents of Camp Ashraf is in jeopardy. It's in jeopardy right now, right this moment. It will be in jeopardy until the international community says that this is unacceptable. This cannot happen.
So, Jamal, why do you think so many, former and current people involved in politics accepted money and sort of now go to bat for this group?
As we saw with the remarks by Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen, there was frankly, this red herring about the situation in Ashraf. There is, the MEK's base is inside of Iraq. And when the United States went in there and toppled Saddam, instead of dealing with this organization as it should have been dealt with, which is first and foremost as a terrorist organization, but second as a cult, as the State Department has said time and time again, this is a cult in which people have been imprisoned in Iraq. Instead of dealing with it that way and maybe separating some of the prisoners there from the cult leaders and dealing with it like that, Donald Rumsfeld said, let's hang on to these guys. Let's see if we can keep them there, we'll protect them, and sort of kick the can down the road. They could be useful against Iran someday.
Well, and that's what we're hearing from a lot of people who support the MEK and wanted to see them delisted. We're hearing, first of all, the MEK wants to see the Iranian government toppled. And essentially, in a lot of ways, so does the U.S. government. So you have the sort of enemy of the enemy as our friend kind of thing. You also have people saying, even if you don't like them, they haven't done anything sort of terrorist-related anytime recently. So what's your argument to that?
Well, the fact of the matter is, U.S. officials, and I wouldn't characterize the entire U.S. government as supporting this group. There are certainly members of Congress who do. There are members of the administration who strongly oppose the organization. But U.S. officials went, public. They went to NBC and said, MEK is working with Mossad to conduct assassinations inside of Iran. So there's clearly, at least reportedly, still a paramilitary aspect to this group, and they are committed to advancing their political agenda by using violence. The problem here is that, first of all, the Iranian people don't view MEK as a legitimate group. This is a group that has lost all credibility. The Iranian people may detest the Iranian regime, but even the only group less popular than the Supreme Leader and the regime is the MEK. And now there's this appearance that the United States is going to be behind that group. And you can be sure that the Iranian regime is going to use that to undermine the credibility of the United States, as well as to undermine the credibility of legitimate pro-democracy and pro-human rights forces inside of Iran, to basically label them as being somehow affiliated with the MEK, which is now somehow affiliated with the United States.
I think that's a really important point you make. I mean, we've certainly been traveling down this path for years, some say even decades now, of trying to figure out, the U.S. government has been trying to figure out what to do about Iran. Certainly we've heard from countries like Israel, from certain people in our own Congress, that the only answer has to do with, taking military action. But, President Obama, that didn't seem to be his first choice. Does this sort of backing of the MEK, delisting it, does this sort of eliminate any chances there were, if there were any chances, to negotiate more diplomatically?
I think there can be no mistake that this campaign was a campaign to make war more likely. This was part of the push for war. When you have negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, the number one hurdle from the Iranian side is this perception that the United States doesn't actually want to negotiate a resolution to the nuclear issue, that this is about regime change. Just like on our side, our number one concern is we can't trust the Iranians that they don't want a nuclear weapon. This adds fuel to the fire inside of Iran, that this is really about regime change, and the United States is not going to accept any kind of diplomatic resolution.
That's the take you're saying inside of Iran, but do you think that's the take inside the U.S. government?
Inside the U.S. government, this makes it a lot more difficult to negotiate with the Iranians because we've now taken this group off the list. And here's the thing. If these guys could pressure their way off the terrorist list, if they could pour millions of dollars into the top lobbying firms in the United States, pay the top officials like Giuliani, like Bolton, like Dean, to speak out on their behalf and basically manufacture this campaign to achieve their political agenda here. Imagine what they're going to do now that the MEK is off the list and you have all this money that we don't know where it's coming from is swirling around, and the next push is we need war with Iran.
So all of these politicians in the U.S., we're talking, former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, a Democrat who's an MSNBC contributor. We're talking, as you said, Giuliani. We're talking Tom Ridge, the former Homeland Security Secretary under George W. Bush. Is it just about money? Are they just being paid a ridiculous amount of money? Or is there something else? I mean, I can't imagine that, Al-Qaeda could come in and pay any amount of money to U.S. politicians to get their way. Don't you think that they really truly believe that MEK has been wrongfully characterized as terrorists?
I think that there are some people on that list who didn't know any better. You have President Obama's former national security advisor basically said he didn't know what the group was. He just saw that they were opposed to the Iranian regime. So he said, hey, a free flight, a free meal, and $20,000 to advocate for this group, that's fine by me. But you have other people, like, for instance, Dana Rohrabacher in the House, or Ross Lehtinen, who have said they actually support this group because they're willing to use violence. Rudy Giuliani, after it came out that the MEK may be behind some of the terrorist attacks inside of Iran, said they deserve a Congressional Medal of Freedom for what they were doing, and that this is actually the reason that the MEK should be supported, not any of the red herrings about human rights, in which we would be actually fueling the human rights crisis within these MEK camps.
What do you think? By being taken off this list, this means, as you said, no longer is it forbidden, is it illegal for U.S. citizens to give, support to MEK. They can give all the advice they want, and now they can give all the money they want. What's the long-term effect of this?
I think that the first thing we need to watch out for is that the Congress is going to, some of their supporters in Congress are going to make a push to actually fund this group and actually have U.S. money funneled to this group as a means to destabilize and commit attacks inside of Iran. I wouldn't doubt that there's legislation actually being drafted as we speak that would do just that.
That's great. And what about, if they got their way, if the regime was indeed toppled, what would that mean for MEK's leadership role in Iran?
Well, the MEK has a long history of very quixotic, strange ambitions, and I don't think that there's any chance that that organization is going to successfully topple the Iranian government. The fact of the matter is, the only way for change in Iran is for the people of Iran to be involved in it, and they are not fans of the MEK. But that does speak to what the ambition here is. The ambition for the MEK is not about human rights or peace and diplomacy. The ambition is to install the leadership of the MEK as the new dictators of Iran, and to run Iran the same way that they run their camps, which Human Rights Watch, the RAND Corporation have all documented very well how undemocratic, how cult-like, and how abusive to fundamental human rights the MEK has been towards their own members.
Fascinating stuff, something I think a lot of people are just kind of starting to take notice of. Appreciate having you on the show. Jamal Abdi, Policy Director of the National Iranian American Council. Thanks as always.
Thank you.